Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. Today we're talking about Xbox using AI generation to create video games. They have recently announced MUSE, which is their own version of a generative system that can actually create video game ideas for them. If you were to ask me how artificial intelligence could be used to actually benefit gamers or benefit gaming developers, I would really say that there's no benefit, especially for gaming developers. Because if these developers, for example, the ones at Ninja Theory that are really streamlining this process with Microsoft Research and the AI generative development, if they're the ones that are really pushing this boundary with how can we use AI to actually produce video games and produce video game ideas, it's these same developers that are going to be losing their jobs first. It's the same animators, the same artists, the same gameplay designers, and I just don't think that in a world where we have artificial intelligence making games for us, or developers using AI to make games for them and to make game ideas for them, that it's going to end well for anybody. And yes, Nvidia has been taking the brunt force of all of this success from implementing AI generation into their own graphics cards through DLSS, which artificially increases frame rates and resolutions by upscaling. So there are in fact benefits for artificial intelligence to be used inside of the video game industry, or more importantly into video game technology or into hardware, specifically on how it can be used to upscale games and make games run better. I really feel like that's where most of it should be going. But when we take a look at how, hey look, should we use Copilot or should we use our ChatGPT to think of a game story for us or to even create gameplay for us? Even look, we've used all of these different games, like the one that they showed, Bleeding Edge. Bleeding Edge was the game that they used as the main example on this research article that I'll also leave in the description if you want to go check it out for yourself, but they had all these different little gameplay differences on how they used AI, with consistency, with diversity in the gameplay by using AI, and with persistency as well. They're calling it the First World and Human Action Model, or WHAM, not to be confused with the famous pop duo Wham. They've named it MUSE, and it's a generative AI model of a video game that can generate game visuals, controller actions, or both. In this article, they've shown off 9 different generated gameplay examples just of Bleeding Edge running through this program, and honestly, it is impressive when you take a look at it on a technological level, and if we're taking a look at it from, look, in a decade, this could be a lot cleaner, it could look a lot better. But when we take a look at it, of course, in a decade, what's the point of game developers? What are the point of artists? What are the point of animators? What are the point of any of these people who work at these studios, especially writers? I feel like writers are probably going to be the most affected because AI can just easily write these stories for these games right now just through chatbots and text prompts. We don't need them. They have a whole spreadsheet as well showing original gameplay given by a human and then giving training updates. At 10,000 they had AI using it, at 100,000 they had AI generating it, but with no degradation over time, and with 1 million training updates they also had correct interactions with a power cell and models flying mechanic correctly. So of course the argument that could be brought forward is that, hey look, these developers have to create these games in the first place for this generative content to actually be useful, and yes, that's a great argument, but we already have hundreds of thousands of games that are already out there. If a new game developer wants to come in, or if Xbox, PlayStation, if any big conglomerate wants to come in and say, we want to make this game, let's just take ideas from previous games and let's generate them all together and see what we can make. And look, if we have a good gameplay design, if we have something that's there, we don't have to create it ourselves, we just have to copy paste it into our engine. We literally have the idea right in front of us. We don't have to think for ourselves. And I feel like it's a wet dream for publishers like Microsoft, PlayStation, Activision, Bethesda, any of them, EA, Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, to have the ability to use AI generation to create video games for them, to create video game ideas for them, and just cut out the developer entirely. Saves them money and makes it so much easier. But then we look at it at a consumer value. If a consumer knows that you're using AI generation to create your video games, yeah, it's cheaper for you. Yes, you'll have a higher chance of profit, but you're also going to have a black stain on your company. No one is buying Ubisoft games right now, and I bet if they attempted at all to use AI generation at this extent for creating video games, it would never work. They wouldn't sell anything. Now, if I haven't doomed and gloomed you enough, Phil Spencer did come on and state that, hey, look, you know, this could be useful for game preservation. And in my opinion, your game preservation idea, it's a bold ambition by using AI generation to actually preserve these titles and bring them up to modern hardware. That sounds like a good idea. We also have emulation. We've had emulation for decades now, and what you could also do is just send in a few developers to port the game. But you're lazy. It's pure laziness. It's pure we don't want to pay people to actually do this. We would rather pay people to make a generative AI so we can do this infinitely once it's actually complete, because in the long run, it would be cheaper to just pay someone to create the generative AI that can port the games themselves, instead of actually having to hire people for each specific game to go all the way back into the previous hardware, tinker with it, make sure it's actually usable on the new hardware, or emulate it for new hardware or for PC. It's pure laziness.
I'll tell you one of the things that I get excited about. One of the things we care a lot about at Xbox is game preservation. And I think about an opportunity to have models learn about older games that were maybe tied to unique pieces of hardware, where that engine on that hardware is kind of, time will erode the amount of hardware that's out there that can actually play a game. But you could imagine a world where from gameplay data and video, that a model could learn old games and really make them portable to any platform.
So the emulation prospect of using this AI generation to go back and, kind of bring forward all of these previous games for the sake of preservation doesn't really make sense to me when we've had emulation for decades. Again, we've had all of these processes happen before. We don't need some AI generation to go back and kind of remaster these games when you could as easily send back a few developers to just go switch up the game button controls and maybe attempt to port it to newer hardware. Some games, it's just not possible. Fair enough. We also have thousands of emulators on PC. That's a thing that's always been there, and that will continue to be there for decades to come. You don't need AI generation for that. And on a technical level, once again, I feel like this could be really ambitious for the studio at Ninja Theory and for the people at Microsoft Research to go out and say, hey, look, can we use AI generation to either assist game developers in creating games and making game ideas and making gameplay and making art? How can we do that? And we've seen many cases already where game developers has used AI creation in their video games. Activision, for example, a studio under Microsoft, was using AI and was caught using AI images on one of their little season passes where I think a zombie had 6 fingers. Microsoft is a company that's all in on AI. They've stated this before, and they're all in on gaming as they stated this before. They want to produce games at a high level and at a high profitability, and if they see AI as a way to streamline this process and to make it easier for them, and that lowers costs but increases revenue in some sort of way, they're gonna do it. Even if people boycott Microsoft, as long as profits keep coming in, they don't care. They don't care about their public image in that sense, as long as they are using future technology to create video games, especially if they're one of the first adopters of this. I have no doubt that more game companies like Sony, like Activision, like Take-Two, like EA, like Ubisoft are going to follow suit. It was the same thing that happened when Take-Two Interactive instilled a $70 price tag on all games. Everyone else followed suit. If Microsoft is able to create this technology, I have no doubt that all these game developers are going to once again follow suit. We also live in a world where the Twitter owner, Elon Musk, is even thinking about opening up his own game studio that uses AI technology to actually create video games in order to make games great again. In my opinion, it's not going to work. I have a feeling this is going to be a failed prospect for him and is going to make him lose millions or billions of dollars, and it just will not work out. But again, it's early adopters into this industry that is probably going to be using AI more and more, and where game companies have been caught using AI. Even now, Take-Two Interactive and Ubisoft has stated that they're fine with artificial intelligence being used in video games. More so, the Take-Two Interactive CEO stated that he knows that the creative genius is human and that he's not going to take away from that. But again, if Microsoft follows suit with this push of artificial intelligence and generative AI being used in video games in order to create video games and to streamline processes and really just to cut out the middleman, which are the developers, more companies are going to follow suit. It'll lower costs, and by that end, increase revenue. I just don't believe that AI generation and AI ideation is really going to be good in the end game for game developers and for the gaming industry as a whole. We've already seen game developers using AI as a way to get around artwork and a way to get around storytelling. I have no doubt that these companies will once again use it for AI programming, use it for AI, just anything. They're going to be using artificial intelligence for everything, and at some point in the gaming industry, we're going to have dumbed-down experiences because all of these gaming developers, or mainly these gaming publishers, are too lazy to go out and hire employees that actually know how to create projects and create video games. This may not happen in a few years, it may not even happen in a few decades, but it will happen at some point. We cannot accept these gaming conglomerates allowing to be able to use AI generation, even if it's just something they're researching right now. That is not something that the gaming industry can accept. It is an art form. It is not something that artificial intelligence can mimic, and it is not something that we should allow them to mimic using that generative AI. But with all that said and done, my rant is over. Thank you all for watching this video. If you did enjoy and want to see more videos like this one, consider leaving a like, sharing, commenting, subscribing, and becoming a member. It's as low as $1 if you so choose to. Thank you all for watching. See you guys in the next one.